Oh, hello dear friends, your favorite gamer here, D-Bomb Plague. I'm extremely excited for the launch of the Switch 2. In fact, I'm pre-ordering one right now. I am so happy. Wait, something's wrong with my payment. Oh no, I think my bank account has been hacked. What am I gonna do? I know, I'ma enter the virtual world and fight the virus hacking my account myself. And what better way to learn how to do this than by playing the legendary Mega Man Battle Network games? Yeah, let's get the somewhat recent collection and... well, fuck. Why don't we play some similar games instead? Now, before you come swinging at me, I know back when I had to go through the torture of playing Mega Man X6, I swore I'd never play another Mega Man game ever again. However, the Battle Network series is quite different from the franchise's core gameplay loop, and I've actually been very interested in this series for a while. But what is Mega Man Battle Network? Mega Man Battle Network is a series of spin-off games of the Mega Man series. Instead of running around shooting and jumping through incredibly unfair levels, this is a tactical RPG with a very particular gameplay. You have parts where you roam around the real world as the main character, Lan Hikari, where you can talk to NPCs, buy items, accept side quests, etc. But the most representative aspect of the series comes once you enter the net and take control of Megaman.exe. No, not that kind of EXE. Anyways, you explore the net like a dungeon and battle viruses, which are set as random encounters. The combat system, through, is the most representative part of the series. Once you encounter an enemy, the view switches to a grid. You have a space of 3x3 to move around, just like your enemy, even though this space can be altered by both you and your adversaries. You have to move around your available tiles in order to avoid attacks and hit the viruses, both with your regular arm cannon and with stronger attacks called battle chips. You can select your battle chips by placing them into a folder before the battle begins to use them in combat as either buffs, modifiers or stronger attacks. Once you have used them, you'll have to wait until your custom gauge replenishes in order to equip them for battle once again. You can only equip the same type of chips or ones that share the letter, so this adds a level of strategy when choosing your setup. Even though it's not as widely popular as the main series, the Battle Network games have inspired a variety of titles, creating a subgenre known as Battle Network likes. Well, that's disappointing. So, let's stop wasting time and take a look at our first game for this video, One Step from Eden. One Step from Eden is an action game developed by Thomas Moon Kang and published by Humble Bundle. It was released on March 26, 2020 for PC and Nintendo Switch, with ports to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One being released in June 2020 and November 2021 respectively. The plot of this game is as simple as it gets. You're just traversing a war-torn land looking to get to Eden. That's it. Even the lore is kinda absent in this game, so this one is perfect for just focusing on playing and having a good time. The game is a roguelike with some deck building elements, evidenced in the game's combat system. Similar to the Battle Network series, you move in a 3x3 grid, but unlike the games from which it takes inspiration, here you can't steal terrain from your enemies, who also move in a 3x3 grid opposite to yours and have different movement and attack patterns, which, depending on enemy combinations, can make battles fairly manageable or incredibly difficult. You have two available attacks at all times in form of spells, which can be used with A and B. These spells consume mana in different amounts. For example, stronger spells consume more mana, and some of them you can't even use unless you upgrade your max mana. All of your attacks have different ranges, so you must pay attention to your movement and location not only for avoiding enemy attacks, but also to make sure that your attacks will actually hit the enemies. Whenever you win a battle, you can choose one of 3 cards as a reward, and once you level up, you can choose a passive ability for your character. To be honest, this combat system is quite challenging. Waiting for mana to recharge to be able to attack is quite daunting. If only I could... Wait, what was that? Turns out, you have an additional attack. It does pitiful damage, but it can mean the difference between life and death. All characters have a different basic attack, with some of them consuming mana either way, and others not really causing any damage at all, like Riva's bounce ability. Due to the roguelike nature of the game, you advance through a map with different events, like normal battles, mini-bosses, hazards, situations where you must save a hostage, treasures/collecting bonuses, the shop where you can buy new cards, passive abilities, make packs or upgrade and remove cards from your deck, and a bonfire where you can recover some health. Man, I wonder if Hidetaka Miyazaki had any idea of how culturally relevant his Dark Souls franchise and elements would become in video game culture. Anyway, once you get to the end of an area, you must face a boss to continue to the next one. These battles are tough as nails, and most of them have very difficult to avoid attack patterns and make a lot of damage. The bosses are all the other playable characters, except for the final area bosses, but I wouldn't know anything about that. I've never gotten further than halfway through a run. When you defeat a boss, you can either kill or spare them. If you decide not to deliver the final blow, they will appear and aid you for the rest of the run, while killing them will net you rare spells and artifacts. This also determines the route you're taking: neutral, pacifist, or genocide. Man, I wonder if Toby Fox had any idea of how culturally relevant Undertale would become in video game culture. And hey, we're far from the last Undertale reference in this video. An interesting fact is that if you choose so, you can challenge the shopkeeper to a battle by attacking her instead of taking a look at her wares. And believe me, this is no easy task. You see, you can only fight the shopkeeper if you choose a route that takes you to the shop, and the farther you advance, the more health she will have. It is recommended to fight her on the first store. However, if you somehow manage to defeat her, the shop will no longer be available for the rest of the run, which can greatly handicap you and decrease the chances of making it to the end. After you finish a run, by either dying or beating the final boss, you get unlockables based on how many times you level up in your run. Unlockables seem to come at different tiers for spells and artifacts, with playable characters being unlocked after you defeat them in World 4, and other items like outfits having special unlock conditions. Speaking of spells and artifacts, some cards have funny references in them to other games and popular culture in general, like Flurry having a JoJo reference, and Time Stop having an even more blatant reference. There are a lot of different references in the flavor text of most cards, so see if you can find them all. Or, just go to TV Tropes and look for them, I don't care. I spent around 10 hours playing this game, despite the count on the game saying that I've played 175 hours with Saffron alone, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of what it has to offer. But it's because, to be honest, the game is incredibly hard, probably one of the hardest roguelites that I've ever played. Still, it is fun, looks and controls good, has interesting and solid gameplay mechanics, and it is extremely addictive. So, check this game out if you like difficult games with a simple story and you, just like the characters of this adventure, dream of getting to paradise someday. That was quite an intense journey, even if I never managed to reach Eden myself. But that doesn't matter. What really matters right now is that I managed to get into cyberspace and I'm now looking for that fucking virus that stole my money. I need a real expert in this field, which is why it is quite a lucky coincidence that our next game's main character happens to be a skilled white hat hacker. Let's see what I can learn from him while we take a look at pardon my French, Cardaniel. Cardaniel is a roguelike deck-building RPG developed and published by Inti Creates. Yes, they are the same developers from the Azure Striker Gumball series, the questionable Galgun series, and, funnily enough, they also developed a couple of Mega Man games, specifically the Mega Man Zero and Mega Man CX series, Mega Man 9 and 10, as well as a spin-off of the Battle Network series called Mega Man Battle Chip Challenge, which changed the real-time battle system for something a lot more automatic, something that didn't land well with the fans of the Battle Network series and was blasted negatively by both fans and critics. Well, that's not a good point of reference to start this game, So let's just take the reckless platforming action and the anime waifus into account. Wait, they also helped develop Mighty Number 9? Oh, fucking hell. It was released on October 24th, 2024 for PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Series, Nintendo Switch, and PC. This game takes place in a world where video games are fully immersive VR experiences, and, as such, criminals have taken advantage of this to commit all types of cyber delinquency. You play as Neon, a cybernetic detective that one day receives a distressed email and enters the cyber realm to stop some rogue creatures known as mods, short for Mad Obstructive Data. The person who contacted him was Ansi, a pretty, well-endowed lady who offers to hire him to put an end to all that mayhem. He accepts, as long as his payment is a date with Ansi in the real world. My man really be out there risking his life for a piece of ass. Respect. The game takes its main gameplay elements from, of course, the Mega Man Battle Network series, in that you will explore dungeons fighting enemies until you get to the boss. However, there's a bigger emphasis on deck building elements in this game, and even though you take on different missions and progress through the story, it has some role-like elements, given that every time you enter a new dungeon, your deck resets, so you have to power yourself up again. Unlike Battle Network and One Step from Eden, this game is a bit more lenient towards turn-based combat. You see, the cards you have are not only used for attacking, they're also your means of movement in order to avoid attacks. Each card has a movement attribute, so this adds an element of strategy to which cards you decide to play to attack and which ones do you save for avoiding enemy attacks. However, you can't just spam the cards whenever you want, as you have a number of action points that determine the use of cards, even though it's worth noting that movement doesn't spend action points. Enemies have a timer for when they are going to attack, and you can also see their area of impact, but you better be careful, given that some enemies have extra attacks besides their attack, like generating virus cards in your hand or debuffing you. Whenever there's one of these passive enemies on the field, it should be your immediate priority to get rid of these fuckers as soon as possible. Speaking of which, the first enemy you face in the game is called Salazar, a thinly disguised parody of Charizard. But the Pokemon roasting doesn't end there, as Neon mentions this monster is from, and I quote, Ginkendo's Monster Racing RPG Capsule Creatures. Dear lord, this is lawsuit territory. Unlike the Battle Network series, you can actually see the enemies in the dungeons, and you choose whether to engage with them or not, given that the only reward for winning battles with regular mobs is a card, so once you have put together a powerful deck, you can stop battling small enemies, as there's no leveling up system in this game. In fact, it is highly recommended that you choose your battles carefully and finish them as soon as possible, as the rankings given at the end of the run favor the lowest number of turns taken to complete the dungeon. The game slowly unveils new mechanics, like muses, some special beings you must defeat in battle in order to gain their help in the form of a song. These provide different modifiers after a condition is met, and these buffs can turn the tide of a battle and absolutely power you up. The design of these muses can seem a little raunchy, to be honest, but hey, what did you expect from the same studio that brought you classics like Galgun and Galguardians? Hey, don't look at me like that. It's not like I'm complaining. There are also cards with the break effect. This can cause two different reactions. You can either lower the opponent's attack power so their attacks don't deal any damage, which is especially useful for unavoidable attacks, or you can break their posture and leave them staggered for the rest of your turn. Another type of cards are action cards, which you can use when an enemy is about to attack to trigger a counter attack, with some cards having an additional effect if you manage to counter an attack successfully. In addition to this, you can sometimes add cheat codes to your cards or get cards with these codes already included. These are additional effects that, once applied to a card, all duplicates in your deck will get the same additional effect. There are also setups, which are special conditions that activate the special effects. Man, by this point it feels like I'm playing fucking Yu-Gi-Oh! With how much shit I have to take into account. Each card has a secondary, more powerful form. However, once you use a card in this state, it will permanently break and become useless, and you'll have to wait for an opportunity to remove it from your deck. But if you activate an effect from a muse, you can use a card once in its powerful state without breaking it. But not everything is just complex text and head-spinning effects. Cards have extra information that you can check that is not relevant to the gameplay at all. Just a description of the character depicted in the card and a summary of the in-game video game they belong to, which is a nice detail. While most of the games mentioned are fictional, some are Inti creates its own IPs, like Azure Striker and Galgun. Once you beat a dungeon, you return to your house, where you can check the cards that you have encountered so far, get upgrades from the points that you get in the dungeon, and spend some time with Ansi. After progressing a bit, you get the option to rest on Ansi's lap, with some pretty, let's say, interesting visuals. Leaving the horniness aside, from here you can also access the game's challenge mode, where you're given specific conditions to clear a battle, and an online multiplayer mode where you can test your might against other players. Overall, I think this is a pretty solid game. While the story is nothing to write home about, the gameplay loop is pretty engaging. It has different difficulty levels so that you can make the experience as easy or as difficult as you want to, and leaving aside some cringe-worthy dialogue and raunchy character designs, the complexity of the mechanics is sure to appeal to a lot of people. Check this game out if you like deck builders, the complexity without reaching Yu-Gi-Oh! Type overwhelming levels, and boobs. Giant, voluptuous, humongous. Alright. With all my new knowledge about how to deal with cyber criminals, I'm about to find this virus and recover all my money, even though I don't really know how to destroy it once I find it. I need to find an expert in fighting bugs and nasty creatures, and I think I know exactly where to find them. Let's dive into our final game for the day, Lunar Looks. Lunar Looks is an action-adventure RPG developed by Cosmic Novab Games and published by Indie.io. It was released on September 2023 for PC and on April 17, 2025 for Nintendo Switch. At first, when I started working on this video, I got the PC version to be able to play it, but they announced the Switch version like a month later. So not only I couldn't get a refund on Steam, but I had to buy the game twice, and it was way more expensive on the Switch than on PC. I swear sometimes life just likes to make me angry. The game takes place in a futuristic world, on a place called Luna, the moon of an Earth-like planet named Terra. This planet was devastated by a cataclysm caused by a comet collision 1000 years ago. The comet is now looming over Luna, and it's the protagonist's duty to destroy it and prevent another massive disaster. All of this while dealing with some mysterious creatures called Mercs, a masked vigilante, and a hidden conspiracy. You play as Bella Gray, a member of the Lunex Force and genetically gifted daughter of the Force's previous commander, Thea Gray. It looks like even thousands of years in the future, nepotism is still a thing. This is the most story-driven game of the bunch, as it doesn't have any roguelike elements. This is a turn-based RPG with elements of exploration, interaction with NPCs, optional side quests, and a deep story. Out of all the games in this video, this is the one that most resembles the Battle Network series, with the only obvious exception being that combat doesn't take place on a grid. Even though the combat isn't grid-based, it still has some similarities with the Battle Network series, like some attacks being avoidable moving on panels, and the main combat mechanic, skills, working like Battle Network's chips. The battle system of this game is simple to understand, while also having some deep mechanics to optimize your performance. Once you enter the battle stage, a menu shows up with 4 options: skills, charge, items, and codex. Skills are the attacks that you have at your disposal, all with their special effects listed in the description, as well as their attack power and the amount of SP they consume. At the beginning you only have 4 skills, but you'll increase your arsenal as you progress through the adventure. Once you select your active skill, you can select one support skill from 3 different options to add an extra effect, like increasing the skill's attack power, granting an extra shield, or completely negating the SP cost of said skill. Some attacks require you to perform an extra action, like stopping a gotcha at a multiplier value or pressing a button at a specific time. Charge is used to refill your SP, which is very important to keep an eye on, given that if you don't have SP, you won't be able to use any skills. The items option lets you use an item to recover HP, SP, or both. Finally, the codex shows you information like combos, a database with information about enemies, etc. Once it's your opponent's turn to attack, it can go one of two ways. You're either given the chance to dodge the attack moving on some panels, or block the attack by pressing the A button at the correct moment. In order to block an attack, however, you must have shields. Shields can be gained by either using an active skill to recharge them or by means of a support skill. Given that it's not always possible to dodge attacks, it is necessary to manage your shields properly, especially when facing multiple enemies. Oh, I forgot to mention, there are other attacks that you have to avoid in a very particular way. Does it remind you of something? Another mechanic that will come in handy, especially in bosses, is the Lux combo. You fill up the Lux bar by attacking enemies and blocking attacks, and once it's full, you can choose 3 skills to combine and unleash a devastating attack. Once you finish an encounter, you'll get a ranking, as well as currency, experience, and skill points. The ranking you get depends on how much you get hit, with S rank only being obtainable by not getting hit during the battle. It's worth noting that leveling up only affects your HP, as skill damage, SP cost, and shield capacity are upgraded via equipment and other objects, like gun drops, which reduce the SP cost of skills. The RPG element of the game is reinforced by the affinity system. Whenever you're in a planet or different territory, you can gain affinity by interacting with the different NPCs of the place and helping them out by doing side quests. By raising the affinity level, you'll get better discounts in the stores in that specific place. While exploring the towns or safe zones, you won't run into any enemies, unless the plot requires it. However, when exploring a wild zone, you can find these weird rifts that serve as enemy encounters. You can choose to either engage with them or ignore them completely. But not everything is gloom and doom, as you can see various shoutouts and cameos of other franchises, like Pokemon, Among Us, Mega Man, and of course, Undertale. You also have your trusted sidekick Tetra, who you can talk to by pressing the Y button in case you forget what your current objective is. But she's not there only as a plot device or comic relief. There are parts where you have to hack into a network or system, and you take control of Tetra in some 8-bit segments, where you must traverse a small zone, unlocking paths and destroying viruses. A curious detail about the Switch version is that it has some funny bugs. For example, at launch, the devs apparently forgot to change the button prompts on screen, as you could sometimes see instructions including keys instead of buttons, like E or Z, which could get confusing sometimes. Even though it has already been patched, there's still one that remains, and this one is quite interesting. In one part of your adventure, you have to infiltrate the Lunar Force military base, and there's this room with lasers that you have to avoid. Look, I'm not sure what's supposed to happen when you touch the lasers in the PC version, but in the Switch version, the lasers are so powerful that if you touch one, the game will immediately crash. Sure, it was funny at first, but the timing for avoiding the laser is quite precise, so eventually it gets very frustrating. Despite this, I would wholeheartedly recommend the game. The art style is truly reminiscent of the GBA days, with a crisp pixel art and vibrant colors. The combat system is deep and engaging, and even though it doesn't follow the Battle Network formula to a T, the combination of combat, exploration, and story is more than enough to keep you glued to the game until completion. So, check this game out if you like stories with twists and turns, space settings, and tons of references in your games. Well, that will be all for today, my dear friends. Tell me, did you know about these games? Which one did you like the most? Are there any other Battle Network likes that I should check out? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, one game a day keeps the plague doctor away. Thanks to my friend Tetra, I was able to eliminate the virus and claim back my bank account. Now it's time to finally get my Switch too. Oh dear. Looks like all this time I was just broke.